Welcome to the New Experience Exchange session. Today we're meeting with Jason Hausenloy, our youngest national organizer who represents Singapore. Back in 2022, Jason, a high school student, contacted me to see if he could participate in the International Economics Olympiad and was very disappointed to learn that Singapore was not on the list of the participating countries. However, he decided that he wouldn't wait till the selection appears and he would simply create the one by himself. In quite short time, Jason managed to successfully apply for a grant and get a partnership agreement with a university and an economic center. Now, thanks to Jason, Singapore has a 3-year agreement with the International Economics Olympiad, and this year will be the second time Team Singapore participates in the competition. Jason, thank you very much for finding time to meet and share your experience. Could you please tell us what's your current status, where do you study, and what do you do in the field of economics?
Yeah, of course. So I'm currently still in Singapore. I just graduated from high school actually a couple of days ago, and I'll be heading off to the US to study for the university. I think I'm still deciding on what major to go for, maybe economics, maybe applied maths, most likely at the University of California, Berkeley. What field of economics most interests me? Like to me, I think I'm most interested in sort of the intersection of economics and public policy. So looking at how we can improve other people's lives and by through like econometric modeling, so sort of doing sort of economic analysis and also using like market-based principles to design policies and study really sort of what interventions are effective and what are not. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. Congratulations on finishing your school life and starting a whole
Thank
new
you.
milestone in your life and career as well. So let's go back to the year before. Why did you initially get interested in the International Economics Olympiad and how did you learn about it?
Yeah, so I've been interested in economics for a long time. When I was young, I used to write economics essay competitions, and I always thought that it would be nice to find a community of people who was interested on the quantitative side as well. And I think that the first and sort of the first place that came up was the International Economics Olympiad, which I had a look through the syllabus, and it seemed really sort of rigorous and focused on this like quantitative aspect as well as the qualitative aspect. And so initially I'd wanted to participate, right? I how did I learn about the IEO? I found it online. I saw that people were participating in it. I was familiar sort of with the concept of Olympiads, and yeah, like it definitely made sense. The economics Olympiad would be something that I wanted to do. Yeah, so I why did I get interested? I think it's primarily because I wanted to find a community of people with whom I could share my love of both the quantitative and qualitative side of economics with.
So I hope you did find this community
Yes.
at the International Economics Olympiad. That sounds great. But weren't you afraid, once you learned that Singapore is not on the list of participating countries, weren't you afraid to start your own national selection? Because I believe it's a very dare idea, and most of people would just leave it as it is. They would just wait and hope that someone else would start this type of competition in their country.
Yeah, I think that's very kind. I don't know. I think I got lucky in a bunch of ways. Like I knew people who were in the economic scene in Singapore. I had many friends who were interested in something similar, and I'd also thought that and some part of it I guess was sort of like youthful naivete. Like I didn't really know how hard it would be and the challenges that were coming up. Like to me, I thought, oh, there might be an opportunity here to build this community on my own. And I think if I push really hard in one direction, I think I could be able to I could pull it off. And I think I was like lucky to know the right people in a number of different places. Such that like maybe it wasn't as outlandish as it seemed. Like one early example I remember was from a similar Olympiad, the International Philosophy Olympiad. I'd read on the internet that someone from another school in Singapore had organized a Singapore team, and they'd actually won the Olympiad that year that the high school student organized it. And so definitely, like I wasn't trailblazing by any means, but I think sort of I wanted to have a go and see whether it would, yeah, see whether it would work out and hopefully aim for success. Yes.
Yeah, that's cool that you've managed to find this kind of inspiration in another Olympiad. And also, I'm very happy that for this lack of knowledge that enabled you to, well, get immersed into the process before you actually understood how hard that was. So
Yes.
thank you. But are there any other economics contests in Singapore? Because sometimes other economics contests, they just join and based on their results, they select students. And in Singapore, there are no such contests, right?
Yeah, so the only sort of analogous competition would be the NEFMC, which was run by NUS, and so we did end up speaking with them, and they didn't really have the infrastructure to run an Olympiad, and so we like in the end this was run by the National University of Singapore, and so we did partner with them to run our first round of selection. But apart from them, there was really no sort of big economics contest in the country.
And introductory contests in general, are they popular in Singapore?
I think some of the subjects definitely. So like the Singapore Mathematics Olympiad, the Chemistry Olympiad, we have the National Olympics Olympiad of Informatics here, and the physics and biology. I think the STEM subjects definitely. The International Linguistics Olympiad also fairly popular here. But yeah, Singapore's one of those countries where a lot of students are very focused on excelling academically, and the economics education is incredibly strong, and particularly at the local school level. There are classes like H3 classes, like higher classes, where you can study university level subjects while you're in high school, such as game theory, etc. And so there's really a lot of economics excellence that's built into the curriculum, which made my job a lot easier, to be honest.
Is academic excellence supported by the government? Do they have some programs of work with talented youth?
Yes, definitely. So you might be able to tell, given that I don't speak Singlish, that I'm not actually a Singaporean student. I grew up in the UK, and I go to an international school here. But yes, we did have an opportunity to speak with a lot of local Singaporean students, and also with the MOE, the Ministry of Education, and from my experience speaking to sort of local students, I realized that academic excellence is really rewarded quite highly here, and there's not only sort of like awards, but there's also like the best and brightest students here get academic scholarships that fully fund university tuition and overseas, and in response to working for the government. And so there's this real culture of striving to distinguish oneself. Yes, in academics, in particular.
Well,
Yeah.
that's amazing. It's great when countries have this kind of system and culture, I believe. And in this context, who did you contact first when you decided to build up the selection? Who were the initial partners?
Oh, well, the very first person I contacted was you, Anna. But like we had a conversation very early on, and you were very supportive, and I think that helped a lot. Like the fact that the international, like the organizing like office was so contactable and was so supportive was definitely a big factor here. And then in terms of sort of external partners, I was lucky to already have met the CEO of the Adam Smith Center here in Singapore. We'd cross paths in a number of different places. There were some economics conferences where I've met some of his colleagues, and so Brian Chiang was the first person I really reached out to and talked about this in detail. And then afterwards, once we had his endorsement and we put in a proper application for the International Economics Olympiad with the support of the Adam Smith Center, we then partnered with NUS, like National University of Singapore, and their student society to help design and run the quiz. Yes, and I think yeah, like particular shout out to that society because they really helped us with the logistics for the first round. Yeah.
Well, you've got a very wide network, and that really helps a lot in many different situations. And here,
Yes, definitely.
quite visible how this well actually supported your idea and well made it successful at the end. But how did you fund the selection? Because I announced the grant in the introduction. Could you please tell more about the funding of the selection?
Of course. So um I'm currently I participated in a program called the Atlas Fellowship back in 2022. And this is a program that sort of encouraged long-term economics and mathematical and philosophical thinking on a wide variety of issues. So from sort of like the risks from artificial intelligence to looking at biosecurity and so sort of analogous topics. And they were really like a talent search type program. And so having participated in this program myself and sort of like spoken with some of the founders, they had a fund where their fellows of the Atlas Fellowship could apply for funding to run their own projects. So I wrote an application to this fund, and so we made an agreement where um, they would help sponsor our Olympiad and the associated costs. And in return, we would encourage the applicants apply to the Atlas Fellowship program. And like, yeah, and I think it's worked out pretty well.
Well, is it an international program or a local one?
Yeah, so it's I think it's no longer continued as of 24, but like for 2 years it ran in 22 and 23, and it was this fully funded like international like summer camp plus scholarship where they would fly you to the Bay Area to learn about these different topics. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Sounds great. It's just a recommendation to anyone willing to find some money for organizing any kind of activity to look out for the international programs that support these kind of activities. And let's go back to the selection. Could you please tell us about the composition of it? How did you build it up? What parts did it contain?
Yes, so I mean, we designed our selection as you all suggested, like a filter, right? So we wanted sort of like the first round to be accessible to everyone, and because we were a new Olympiad, we had to piggyback off the infrastructure that had already been designed for the NEFMC in order so that we could reach everyone in Singapore. I remember, like, having said this, this was like no easy task as well. Tane, one weekend just went through, and Tane Suresh is my fellow organizer of the Olympiad, and he went through and he emailed the economics heads of every school in Singapore, and lots of them came back, and lots of them help promote the Olympiad, and so they signed up for the first round, and then from the first round, we got the top scorers, and then we sort of divulged from the NEFMC process. I got one of my friends, an extremely talented economics student in the UK, to help me design a second round challenge where we would assess their sort of like qualitative and written components. And then so this like I can tell you this now, like one of the questions that we had on the second round was like trying to estimate the cost of Mars if it was to be auctioned tomorrow. And I think it's sort of like this sort of lateral thinking that is like maybe a bit unusual, like very difficult to cheat on, even if you had research. And like what we really wanted to see was like strong, independent, clear, critical thinking, like grounded in like quantitative reality and like test modeling. And so using sort of this type of question, we then we took the best responses from that, and we invited them to a training camp that we held at the National University of Singapore, where we booked out an auditorium for a weekend, and we ran tests. We ran across different selection tests, and we also gave people opportunities to bond. And yeah, and I think then from that we picked the final team, and yes, the final team from there competed in the Olympiad. So a 3-round selection process.
Yeah, I like this combination of creative tasks and the bonding activities, because I think it's really important to well, enable people build their own network and just to get to know each other. Then later probably they will work together or create something great as well. So that sounds amazing. Thank you for your comment. So now I understand who were the first contestants. And are there any other benefits for participating in your Olympiad? Prizes, I don't know, fast enrollment tracks, anything?
Yeah, so I think I mean obviously the community is there, and like I think having a place where we can share different share different opportunities is really valuable. We also gave our own national prizes to the top scorers and also the national team members, where we gave them awards. I meant to bring my team out to dinner, I will do that. But yes, and I think and then we also sent them on a trip to Australia as well to compete in our regional economics Olympiad, which really helped coalesce the team together. Yes.
Mm-hmm. That sounds very warm and cozy, actually. Like a very nice attitude to the contestants. And you mentioned that you've sent out emails to hundreds of headmasters, I believe, or just well, principals of
Head
the
of economics
schools.
department, yeah, yeah. Like the
Yeah.
economics department.
Are there any other means of promotion that you used?
I mean, I had sort of my own, like because I was a student, I was like aware of where a lot of the students hang out. Another organization that was very helpful was the in Singapore we have the largest student running organization is called SG Exams, and it's this big collaborative of many like I think 70,000 students, where they have sort of a huge community of students who are helping each other prep for exams and the like. And we spoke with the current president, and they helped cross promote a lot of our materials there, and so that was an incredibly helpful sort of marketing stream as well. Otherwise, yeah, I think sort of having relationships, like me being a student myself, really did help as well because I spoke with my economics teachers, and they all know each other, and so they could help sort of cross promote in that regard as well.
Mm-hmm. That sounds great. And did you post anything on the internet? I mean, the ads, well, not the ads, but just on the media. Did you get any representation of the competition except for the website and the registration form?
Like honestly, no. Like I think Tane maybe posted on his LinkedIn, but like apart from sort of like concerted social media efforts, we definitely didn't. Maybe this is I don't think we will this year as well, but like this is something we want to change sort of in the future. Um, but I think for now we really didn't find any need. I think a lot of the problem with reaching out on social media more broadly is it's more difficult to target to the specific
Mm-hmm.
Singaporean audience. But I think we sort of had limited time and limited resources. And so we
Mm-hmm.
wanted to spend that focused on yeah, making sure we could get sort of the high value communities first and then go for the broader based appeal afterwards. Yeah. Like I think a lot of our focus was making sure that we didn't miss out on the best student rather than trying to hit as wide a range as possible. And so I think to some extent these two things are correlated, but we definitely didn't want to focus on the areas where we anticipated there'd be a lot of like passionate economic students.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I see. So informational partnership and the word of the mouth is well, a better strategy in your case. And I just wanted to ask about the numbers. How many students have participated last year, and how many do you have this year?
Yes, so I think we had 250 plus students last year for the first round, and then we narrowed that down to about 50 who did the second round and five in the last round. The current process is ongoing, so I still don't have the numbers for this year, but we will we will know by the time the Olympiad comes around, and yeah.
Mm-hmm. I see. So you can't tell right now if you have grown in the past year or no, but later you'll see. So yeah.
Yes,
Well,
later we'll have a proper look.
yeah. Okay. Let's check it out later. And I've got a question, a tricky one. What's the strongest trait of your national selection? What would you name it?
Oh, I think I would say that our national selection really tried to differentiate at the top end quite well. Like I think we picked four things that were like slightly unusual, but ended up being quite helpful with the International Economics Olympiad and our performance there. Because like for example, this question I asked about how much would Mars sell for if it was auctioned off for a visa, or to propose a Singapore policy that would be implemented. I think a lot of it was actually like both pretty similar to the style of questions that were asked in the IEO, but also were like that a little bit more absurd and a little bit more difficult to think of and like difficult to imagine. And I think that meant that we could see truly the limits of economic thinking of our participants quite well in this like creative way that yeah, that I hope was a strong point for our selection test.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. What's the current organizational structure of the competition, by the way? Who do you have on the organizational team, and who, well, actually invests into the organizational process?
Yeah, so currently I've actually taken a step back, and Tane is really taking charge with he will be the team leader A for this year's round, and of course I will help out, and my friend Duncan in the UK would also help out, but and Sanjit, who was a key, who actually participated in the IEO in 2019 as part of the New Zealand team, and was a huge help to the business case, particularly this year. So we'll all stay in touch, and we'll all lend a helping hand. But it's really Tane who's running the show this year, and I think deservedly so. He's one of the most hardworking people that I know, and definitely has a really good grasp of what's needed to help run this organization. Yeah.
So you've got 4 people on the organizational committee, right? And possibly some
Yes,
jury
and
members.
then yeah, we'll have jury members, and we will have and we each have sort of like connections with different economists as well who can help weigh in with the design. Oh yes, there's another like Joseph Tsai from Taiwan was also particularly helpful, particularly with designing some of the training materials for us to use because yeah, given it was our first year, they really had a lot more expertise than we did, and so we leaned on them heavily to help us give with training materials and accessing the financial game and things. And so yeah, that it was really nice to have sort of that like partnership across national selection organizations as well.
So this experience exchange is actually quite useful in some
Um,
situations.
yes, it was really great.
And how much time actually does it take you to organize the selection? When do you normally start preparation, and when do you finish?
Yeah, so it took more time than I expected it was going to take, but like perhaps that should have been yeah, perhaps I should have expected it in advance. I think I spent sort of around like right in the beginning, we started sort of like 2 months before the very first selection round. And so for those 2 months, it was around like 5 hours a week and gradually going up until like during the selection round, we spent like it was basically a full-time job for the couple of weeks that we were running it. Of course, I attended all of the selection rounds, the Olympiads. I addressed the NAFMC. I was always there to answer questions, but and sort of help push the organization running. But yeah, like overall, I think it's sort of very variable, right? Like in the middle time, there was like much less involvement on my end. That is allowed playing.
Yeah, I see.
But yeah.
And what was the hardest part of it?
Let's see.
A tough
Yeah, I think
question.
the most difficult part was knowing whether we had the sort of like logistical expertise to run a in-person events, and like the sort of like difficulties that comes with that. Like there's sort of the basic question of accountability, like are you doing the right things on time? Like you have sort of people that you're responsible for. And then the other part that was like personally challenging for me is a lot of these some of the people who are participating were like around the same age or even older than I was. And so like trying to establish like my like position as like helping to organize this, like not claiming to be better at economics than of course of any of them, but definitely trying to take that leadership role was a thing that I think I struggled with at the beginning, but I really was able to grow and yeah, and learn a lot. And I think it also like being the same age has the nice advantage of like a lot of the people that I met are not only yeah, not only sort of like the participants of my Olympiad, but also like my friends now. And I think that's really nice in a way that I didn't expect. Yeah.
Thank you very much for a very thoughtful reply, actually. I like the hardships that you've managed to highlight. Did you use any facilities? Oh, sorry, did you use any technology to facilitate the organizational process? Probably some online testing platform, some registration forms. specific ones, not Google Forms, something that might help others to build an easier process of national selection?
Well, I don't know. I think the Olympiad was embarrassingly low tech or something. Like we used Google Forms for our registration. We used Wix to build our websites. We used the IEO's like finance Olympiad, like financial like platform like game to test the finances, and we printed out paper tests and we marked everything manually. And so, like in terms of whether there was anything particularly sophisticated, my guess is no. And I think I'm like pretty happy with that actually, that we were able to sort of keep things like relatively low key. I think a lot of it was a product of the ad hoc way that we did a lot of the design and selection, but I think it worked out for the best because it was nothing overly complicated. There was nothing that could go wrong. I think probably the most like technologically sophisticated part was on your end because Singapore, of course, didn't travel, and so a lot of the participation was online. And so like navigating some of those challenges was probably the most intense like technical experience that we had. Yeah.
I see. Well, actually, I think it's the key thing here is to find the selection of tools that are easily accessible and everyone can well navigate through them and use them successfully. So I believe that there's nothing wrong with using Google Forms or Wix to create the website as long as you get the result that you need to. And well, they're visibly very beautiful, I think so. Well, no side parts, no. And by the way, you've mentioned that you have an on-site competition, which means that you need lots of people to organize this kind of activity and event. Did you recruit volunteers? Where did they come from?
Um, I think I would use recruit very loosely here. I'm lucky that I have like good friends in my school and also around Singapore that I know to be sort of very driven and very motivated and who are all very interested in helping. And so rather than any formal volunteering process, I just simply sent a message to a couple of people seeing whether they were willing to help organize. It had helped that our organization had previously run a estimathon for around 100 people in person. And so the in-person event was actually easier to run than that one. And so we already had the experience of the volunteers and they were happy to come again. We gave free food. They had drinks and it was an overall fun time. And so yeah, I think in terms of recruiting volunteers was mostly people I knew, people within my school, and then my network more broadly in Singapore were happy to come and help.
Well, I can tell you're a very good person as long as you have so many friends that are willing to help you in well different
yes,
activities. Yeah.
That's very nice. Um,
That's great. And did you have any notable economists or business leaders on the list of the supporters of the competition who would come and possibly give a lecture or just mention that they support the competition that you're organizing?
So the most sort of like notable figures that we had were in relation to the NAFMC. So they had already built good relationships with the ministry, and so we had, I think, one of the directors from the Monetary Authority of Singapore speak at the first round of our Olympiad. This was like all the credit goes to the NUS organizing team for being able to land him as a speaker, and of course they subsequently had very impressive ministers as speakers as well. But for us, really, like I think apart from that sort of like speaker at the beginning and yeah, and then like Sanjit and stuff who had participated in the IEO before, whose sort of practical advice was really useful. We didn't really have any significant business leaders. I was speaking to a couple of startup founders in Singapore and economists here, but I think ultimately we didn't feel that because a lot of the plans were quite last minute, we didn't feel that we wanted to bring them on anyway. And I think it was because it was so tightly packed. Yeah, we didn't end up having any sort of like really big guest speakers for our like boot camp, and that I think was fine.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I believe it's completely fine, especially for the first year of participation when sometimes national organizers don't have enough time to organize those trainings, and you did have time to do so. So that's impressive. Do you work with the alumni, by the way? The contestants of the past year, do they come to help this year?
Yes, yes, and we're particularly excited to have that. We still chat on a group chat that we have. They're still very willing to help out with the training, and yeah, so that's definitely going to go ahead. And shout out to former Team Singapore for helping out with that. Some of them are still old enough that they might choose to participate again as well, and so
Mhm.
we'll have all of them around. Yes.
So I believe all of those alumni, they have a very tough choice of between participating again or helping to organize. So.
Yes, yes, yes. And they're all incredibly nice people and really great and all going off to do good things as well. And so yeah, like if we can keep them and use them as resources, we definitely will.
Mhm. Sounds amazing. And I've got the last two questions, and one of them is about the worst things that you've encountered while preparing, and the second one is about the best practices. So let's start with the worst ones. Were there any mistakes that you've committed and now understand that you could do it differently? What would it be?
Um, yes, yes. I think there are a bunch of things we definitely want to do differently. From the beginning, I think the main one is being very, very clear on our selection criteria for the final team. So I think what ended up happening is we ended up making a subjective judgment,
Hmm.
like between sort of like so we had these 25 people and we wanted to choose a final team and because we were running over the entire time, we had this like crammed, like 1 hour sort of deliberating session where we had to pick the final team. And I think this probably, in reflection, was not the optimal way to pick a team. And I think the reason that this was a mistake, and that's not to say that the final team we chose was a mistake at all, but I think the process could have been more systematic and more rigorous. And in particular, I think what we should have done is to consider the team dynamics more. I think the problem when we initially selected the team was we picked the strongest individuals and we like didn't consider sort of like the cohesion of the team and like subsequently we had to make one change like as a result of this as a result of sort of the dynamics between individuals, and I think that that's definitely sort of a major mistake that I think we could have avoided in hindsight if we had spent more time thinking about how different people were going to collaborate with each other and like not put ourselves to some sort of high objective standard about like, oh, we actually had sort of an algorithm that we ran on like the different scores that people had and like that were able to like compose our subjective judgments. But I think in sort of the effort to achieve maximum objectivity, we lost some of the like practical considerations of team management, team cohesion, like commitments that I think I definitely would want to have had paid more attention to. Um, the other thing that yeah, definitely I think I don't know whether it was a mistake given how well we did, but I think we definitely could have done even more training. Like we had this weekend boot camp, and then it was very much sort of a asynchronous here's your training materials, here's what you need to work on. And I think it would have been really nice. I think by that point, it was already quite close to the Olympiad, and Tane and I were both traveling, so it was made a bit more difficult. But next time, I think we definitely want to have a more extended amount of time training together as a team. And I think that I don't know whether I'd call that a mistake, but I think having had that would have made a really nice addition to close off the Olympiad experience. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you so much. Those are very deep insights, especially the one about the teamwork, that you should consider that
Mm,
when you select the finalists, because this business case
mm.
round actually is 1/3 of the total point of the team at the IEO. And yeah, it's really worth thinking if those strong economists will perform well together.
Yes.
So the last question is about the best practices. So what are your top three tips for the enthusiasts who are willing to organize the selection, especially taking into account your experience of creating it from scratch?
Yeah, I think the first thing is find people that you really enjoy spending time with, and that and this is quite a rare breed of people, but it's like people who are very, very competent, but who are not very busy. And I think this was true of Tane a year ago, for example. Like he was one of the like most proactive agentic people that I knew, but he wasn't super busy, and he had time, and he had the capacity to work on this, so resources. And so my tip number one for people who are considering this would be to evaluate the people that you want to work on sort of two axes, is like how proactive and how active can they be. And like it may not actually be that important whether they are like superstar economists or not. Like the actual difficult thing is a lot more to do with the organizational ability, and I really have to tip my hat to him and with regards to that. And I think the second is like, do they have the capacity and the willingness to help out? And like in order to achieve that, you really want to give them ownership over this project as well as you. um yeah, the second thing, and this is maybe like the second tip, is like maybe a bit practical, but I've heard this is true in a lot of countries. It's that if you know any university students, universities are really quite easy to get venues and like venues for hosting different events and for hosting boot camps and the like, often for free. So we didn't pay anything to NUS, and running it at NUS had two massive advantages. We had sort of the actual facilities themselves, which was lovely. It was air conditioned in hot Singapore, but also it sort of came with the credibility of being run at the organization. And the only reason we had access to NUS as a venue is because we had an undergraduate student, Sanjay, who had also previously done the IEO on our team, who was helping to coordinate things on that end, and that made things really nice. And so yeah, like second tip, like maybe this is quite a specific one, but like think about whether universities or sort of similar type community organizations, even high schools, might be able to provide sort of a lot of these venues that might otherwise be extremely expensive or extremely difficult to book in advance. And then the final thing is, I think more, yeah, another more practical tip would be to run a similar type test that isn't like, have a practice run of some sort, right? So for us, our practice run was the estimathon, and so from there we had the confidence and sort of a lot of the experience of having run a like large in-person event that gave us yeah, that gave us this yeah, the confidence that we could do this well. And I think that's something that's very important. To the extent that it's possible, run an event that is similar in nature but not as high stakes, because then people won't get mad at you if everything doesn't go to plan, and like people will still have fun. And this also has the twin advantage of allowing you to build a network of interested people in your events. And like if, for example, you would want to run an estimathon, I have like a lot of specific advice on that front. And yeah, like I think more broadly, if you'd like to contact me or Singapore, like I think I'd be happy for people to reach out. Maybe I'll share my contact details with Anna, and then yeah, like if that's something people would like to do, yeah, I'd be happy to give sort of more tailored advice to specific people. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. That sounds amazing. We will certainly post the contact details so that anyone interested in your experience would be able to contact you. And I just wanted to say thank you for this extremely fascinating and, well, inspiring talk, actually. I personally got lots of insights from your experience, and I believe that our colleagues from the IO community will do as well. Thank you very much, Jason. You're an amazing person and an amazing organizer.
Thank you, Anna, for first believing in me and the team here. I think that really pushed us in this direction in the first place. Yeah, and thank you.